the years since he started MCC, there have been church burnings, including and violence like you cannot imagine, including one of his ministers being hung on his front lawn. We've come a long way, and we've never shrunk from the fight. Ladies and gentlemen, the Reverend Elder Troy Perry.
Barbara's family. I met her sister in the green room. To all of you friends who are here today, I bring condolences from all the metropolitan community churches worldwide and from our presiding bishop, Reverend Elder Nancy Wilson. I want to say this today. It's so funny when we stop and we think about people. And Kay I met first before I met Barbara. Kay wrote a book called The Gay Crusaders, and it was published, I believe, in 1971. And she had come to California and she interviewed me for that book. And I remember, as we said and we talked, it was later that I remember meeting Barbara. And I always, look and think of Barbara at some of the most unusual times. I love Barbara because Barbara was always herself. Sometimes we have a face for one part of the community and a face over here for something else. Barbara was the same no matter where you met her. And I remember she and Kay, and I remember picking up a magazine about 20 years ago from San Francisco. And Kay Barbara had been asked the question, and it said, a reporter said, how have you and your partner stayed together? That was back then 30 years. How have you stayed together for 30 years? Without missing a beat, Barbara said, good sex. How can you not love someone like that? It's amazing how many times I've thought of Barbara over the years in certain things. When Mark was talking about our churches being burned down, I was going to Easter in Atlanta, Georgia, when something happened. Pastor of the church called me and said, somebody's tried to burn our church down. Then 2 days later, they tried it again. And then finally, the third time, they still didn't burn it down, but they had made a point. And I arrived there. I was going to preach an Easter service, and when I arrived, everybody, you could have cut the tension in the air. Everybody was frightened. Everybody was afraid. And it was amazing. The Atlanta Constitution had written an article, we cannot have this in this community, people burning down churches. We had that with the synagogue here, the great temple, and when Dr. King worked here. We can't have that in this city. And that morning as a preacher, of course, I did what I always did. I prayed and I said, God, I pray this morning especially, send your angels, let them encamp around about us so we're not hurt. Everybody's frightened. And we went into the church. Finally, we sang our first hymn, started on the second hymn, and the ushers wait for I and the pastor to come to the back door. We got to walk to the back door. Here was a young woman standing there, black t-shirt, no bra. Immediately I could tell. Petite pants, combat boots on. And she immediately stuck out her hand and she said, Reverend Perry. She said, I'm so-and-so. I'm the president of Alpha. She said, the Atlanta Lesbian Feminist Alliance. And my group of women don't go to church. Well, we've been reading in the paper, seeing on television, what's been happening down here. And I brought 40 dykes with me this morning. Angels were lesbians and combat boots. know, I love that woman. I really did. She and I, when we first met, it was really cute the first time. We had a clash. And it was just amazing to me. You know, I thought, my God, here's this famous lesbian. We have a clash. But neither one of us, being the people we were, let that stand in our way. And we became friends, truly friends. Our denomination several times has honored Barbara and Kay. At our general conference of our denomination, we always love these two women. I always stop and I look and I think, you know, that as I look at history and I look at what history says, and as I knew Barbara, I always say there were three things that if she was here today, I think there'd be three things she'd tell us. Number one, you can live about 40 days without water. You can live, without food, pardon me. You can live about, my God, 5 days without water. You can live about 15 minutes without air, but you can't live 1 second without hope. And so I always looked at her as one of those leaders who said to us again and again, we can have hope. We don't have to be afraid. We can stand up. She was my role model because I used my real name too when I came out of the closet. And my goodness, when I saw that tape, I just fell in love with her right then, that she had used her name. We all have names. And people try to treat us in different ways, but she knew, even then, who she was. She knew there was no turning back. She knew she might have some problems. She knew, without a shadow of a doubt, she was going to have hope in her life. Nobody was ever going to take that away from her. And so I say today, we need to have hope. We continue to have hope. I remember the last March on Washington, I told Kevin from the Straight and Gay Alliance, I said, I went over to the Pentagon and broke down crying. I said, when I looked out and saw hundreds of school buses from high school